Welcome back. So now the final world, World D.
As it
What
will
does the D stand?
October.
It stands for dick, because that's what this game is. This game is a dick. Like,
What's okay,
Yeah,
Yuri?
because could you imagine Sonic Lost levels?
There is actually a game called that.
Didn't you guys
An
tell me
official-
that, most
An
of the
official
games,
one.
Most of
An
the
official one,
battle
Jacob.
games tends to be on this kind of level of dickness.
Sorry,
It's gotta be an official one, Jonah.
sorry, what were you asking there, Tio, about Sonic 2, the Lost Levels thing?
No, didn't you guys tell me that the games done by teams tend to be this kind of dickish?
No. Okay, look, Dims
it's go on.
Dims have their quirks here, especially with those bottomless pits, but no, okay, I will say this. For the most part, their level design is not dickish like this. It can be weird, it can be wild, but rarely is it ever like, this unfair. In fact, no, I don't think it's really ever this unfair.
Not to mention, when examining the level design in Sonic games made by Dims, you have to do it on a game-by-game basis because each individual game has its own unique brand of stuff.
Even between each Sonic Advance titles?
I honestly
because
feel
Sonic
like
Advance-
Sonic Advance was their best design game. Not to say
Yeah,
that
Well,
Advance
that's
2
what I
and
mean,
3 were
like,
bad.
That's what I mean, Jova, comparing Advance 1, 2, and 3.
Well, that's what he was saying, though. Like, the advanced one is the one that more closely resembles the classic games. It pretty much sticks to that formula. Advance 2, on the other hand, tries to make the stages more like the speed stages from Adventure 2. Problem is, some stuff that is much easier to see coming in 3D is not exactly the same thing in 2D, but again, we're not here to talk about dissect Advance 2. As for Advance 3 tried to be more like a middle ground between the two, but in my opinion, it didn't really. It tried to be a jack of both trades, but it wasn't really a master of none, in my opinion.
I like Advance 3, but I won't deny it does get weirder with the level design. It's hard to explain, like, the speed and platforming is there, but they don't always mesh well. That said, I'm still one of those weirdos who prefers Advance 3 over Advance 2.
I prefer Advance 3 too, because see, the thing about Sonic Advance 2 is that, like Josh said, Geek Critique, in case you guys don't see it, great channel, check it out if you don't. One of the big problems with the level design in Sonic Advance 2 is that every single level is a downhill jam, as he puts it, because it always starts at the top of the stage and you just go down the level. No, here's the thing. Level design does do a good job capturing that sense of speed. The problem is it's at the expense of interesting level design because you're always running forward. The level design all the levels just blend together because there's no unique trademarks or gimmicks that differentiate things aside from the aesthetics. You know,
And if
that's the
that
big
were-
problem with Sonic Advance 2.
And if that weren't enough, then we have to factor in the godforsaken special stages. Like, I don't even hate the special stages so much as I hate the means that you need to get into them. That is hunting
The
down...
special systems stuffs are fine. It's the way you get to them that's the problem.
Yeah, basically, in a game that emphasizes speed over everything else, you have to hunt for hidden special rings, and mind you, you have to get them all in one go of the level, essentially.
Let's design levels that are meant to be just moving forward, that flat out punish you for exploring.
Alright,
Because if you try to backtrack, the game will not let you. And add a collectible that requires you to explore the level.
I swear, that alone just put Advance 2 as
It's-
my lowest of the Advance games.
The fact that nobody in the development team raised a concern about this is baffling to me, to be honest with you.
I do feel like Advance 3 was sort of an apology for that, because the way to get special stages is thankfully more merciful in Advance 3.
I mean, you still have to go. You still have to go running around picking up chow.
Yeah,
At the
yeah,
very
it's-
least, though, you don't have to get them all in one go, and it's not like you're hurtling at high speeds like in Advance 2 to the point where getting the special stage rings can be a chore in and of itself.
But now you're not going at high speed because you're getting crushed every 5 seconds.
Yes,
I
Pedro.
have a question. What was wrong with the way the classic games did it, where you just get to the end of the level with 50 rings and then you go into the giant ring?
Yeah,
What was wrong with that?
to be fair, not even all the classic Sonic games did it that way. Let's not forget Sonic 3 and Knuckles introduced the special stage rings, wherein those would be
True.
It wasn't so much about of getting to the end, and yes, Bowser shows
Big
up right
Bowser.
there.
Well,
Big
technically,
Bowser.
Big
Java,
Bowser, yeah.
well, technically, Java, the special stage rings start with Sonic 1, because remember, the way you get in special stage in Sonic 1 is by getting to the end of the level in 50 rings, and the special stage ring will show up there. So technically, it was the first game that introduced the special stage rings. But even the star post method from Sonic 2 would be preferable in all of Dimps' methods, to be honest with you.
I mean, I did like the ones they did in Rush, where you just have, if you have enough boost, you go on those special twirly things, and if you boost enough, you can go into the special stage.
That one's fine.
I liked that,
It took you 4 tries, but you finally got this right.
Okay, I will say this, like...
Also,
Dimps...
what kind of castle is this that somehow turns into an underground and upper ground section?
Makes you still going into
Bowser
power.
really... Bowser...
Time's running out.
You see, Pedro, Bowser really went out with this castle design, because he wanted to confuddle and best Mario.
What the
There it
fuck is that wall there?
That's to
It
make
was a
it
spy
tough.
shell all along anyway.
So basically, it's to prevent you from jumping over Bowser. Seriously.
Yep.
Ugh, okay, we're done with World D. So what do we get from completing World D?
Princess Peach, wait.
The same ending you've gotten
Peace
before.
is saved with Kingdom Savior.
So let me get this straight, Miyamoto.
But hey,
I finished
it ends
the
our
game
trip for a
8
long
times.
friendship.
So let me get this straight, Miyamoto. I finished the game 8 times. So I can go for these worlds, and my reward for completing the super duper hard worlds is the exact same ending that I saw before.
No, wait, hold on. This time you get different text that tells you that you got friendship in the end. Not even a kiss. You got friendship.
The original ending also did this. This is basically the same ending.
Yeah, even the
Really?
text now that I think about it.
Okay,
it's the same thing, Jovo.
okay. I know about the whole paved bit, but I could have sworn the friendship thing wasn't originally
wasn't
there.
It was there. It was. They
It's
literally just
funny.
released it. So, okay, couldn't you at the very least give me, anything? Just congratulations for beating the hard mode or something. But no,
It's also funny considering very Sorry, go on.
See, I understand that a lot of games back in this period didn't really have good enough 100% rewards, not really. But this one is different because this one asks me to complete the game 8 fucking times to get that shit.
Don't you see, Pedro? Don't you see, Pedro? The idea is like, well, going through those new different levels, the journey was your reward.
Yeah. Okay, so unlike the NES original, the All-Stars version of Lost Levels is much more forgiving regarding that shit. You only have to complete the game once to access worlds 9, 8, and A through D. So fortunately, that by default already makes this version the definitive one. However, it doesn't change the fact that the level design is still the same as in the original version. So all the dickery from the level design that we've seen up until this point
Don't you see?
is still present.
It helps retain the essential experience of playing Lost Levels.
I'm glad that it removed the stupid finish the game 8 times bullshit. But that's not the only problem the game had.
But okay, Pedro, ask ourselves though, would it then be Super Mario Brothers 2 The Lost Levels if they changed the level design?
Not to mention, the title is incredibly misleading. Okay, why not just call it through the original again? Like I said, the version that Tail grew up with is called Super Mario Brothers for Super Players, which in my opinion is a much better name for this game rather than The Lost Levels.
The reason for that is because, for us NA players, these were the Lost Levels, essentially. It was the game that got away as far as we're concerned. Although, again, I would argue that America ended up getting the better Super Mario Brothers 2.
So remember this stage from Lost Levels? Yeah, doing this stage with the screen crunch is, if anything, like, yeah, there you go. Now you can see you can see some of the higher platforms, but some of the lower ones, of course, you'd have to use the select button to move the camera and stuff like that. So trying to do all of these jumps with the screen crunch is even harder. Again, this game was not designed with the resolution of the Game Boy Color in mind, so the screen crunch adds an extra level of unintended difficulty to an already way too difficult game, in my opinion.
At least there are thankfully some platforms up high enough to the point where if you get to that point, you should be fine. But yeah, no, the screen crunch is a problem.
What this game needs is a fan compilation that can rework the code to make it work on modern resolutions. I mean Super Mario Brothers Deluxe. I mean, like, if Super Mario Brothers Deluxe was decompiled by fans, it would be really cool, because that way we could properly have a definitive de facto version of the first Super Mario Brothers. And hell, if they added in Worlds 9 and A through D to the Super Players version, we could even have also the definitive version of Lost Levels. But yeah, that was Super Mario Brothers. Fuck you, because
you literally ended this playthrough with Mario dying.
Mario is fucking dead.
Well, can you think of a more appropriate way for me to end this playthrough than Mario dying?
Exactly. Mario dying while being on fire. I don't know.
Go on, Lips.
Well, if we're doing final thoughts, I guess the evidence paper speaks for itself. It's just basically Mario 1, but with way harder levels that weren't designed with the controls in mind, and they just did it because Miyamoto and the level designers felt like being dicks. And as a result, you get all this stuff happening with the wind, it being hard to tell where you're going to land, the Hammer Brothers that walk towards you all the time. Need I say more? This is just basically it's a ROM hack, pretty much. It's a ROM hack that was officially sold, and okay. I mean, granted. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with the reasons floating around as to why they didn't release it. Because I mean, if it was because they felt it was too hard, well, how do you know it might be too hard for people? Just give it a chance.
That actually is a good segue to this, because in between parts, I actually went back and rewatched the Gaming Historian's video on Super Mario Bros. 2. And apparently one of the things that happened was when there was this guy on Nintendo America that they gave Lost Levels to so he could see how it was, and he was apparently the one that suggested to Nintendo Japan that this game was not
so once again we have to thank faulty play testers for something.
One play tester. One play tester. That's all they did.
That's the thing, though, is that guy was paid by Nintendo to evaluate whether the game would be good enough for Western players. That was his role in the company. So
I think they give it to more than one person, though. And if it was, in case it was the other reason where it was like, oh, the game's too similar to
that was also a concern
to the other one. I mean, so that stopped people doing that before?
Yeah.
And since, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's a good business strategy. Just give them more of the same. I mean, yeah. So what happened to this one?
It wasn't even that much of a cost to localize the product. Sure,
localized.
It would have been to just manufacture the thing.
No, the game was already made in English to begin with. The version that I played for was the Japanese version. Like, the game was already in English. Even back in Japan, the game always had English text. But that's the thing, Dwebs. There was also some concerns from part of Nintendo that by the time this game would come out in the West, it would already seem outdated. Because remember, there was a big difference between NES games from 85 and NES games from 87. But by 87, we already had much more advanced-looking games on the NES by comparison. So they were also concerned that the big sequel to the big launch game of the console was just would look outdated compared to other games.
Imagine.
I mean, Mega Man came out in 87, so
That's a good example actually. Yeah, but compared to Mega Man 1, yeah, this game, yeah, is a bit
Okay.
It's a bit rudimentary, isn't it, in terms of its.
Okay. Rockman, to be exact. So I think the Western release wasn't until '88.
Yeah.
But whatever. Rockman, Mega Man are the same thing. But yeah, I mean, that theory still holds a bit more credibility, but I still think it's not necessarily enough for a reason on its own not to release the game. Because I mean, again, giving them more of what they've had before. Whatever. But anyway, the point is, we got the game eventually through official means.
Hooray.
And it's bullshit hard.
Alright. Go on, Jova.
It's Super Mario Brothers 2: The Lost Levels. It's gonna be one of those games that I categorize as, holy hell, this is a tormenting game, but it's a part of gaming history that, okay, it is, the scary thing is, it's not even the most bullcrap BS difficult game of its time, believe it or not. Like, there is technically rhyme and reason to how it can work here. Like, and if you work that out, fine. So if you treated this as like a puzzle platformer, maybe you'll have fun with it. That being said, I cannot deny that this game is needlessly difficult. Like, holy cow. Amazingly, unbelievably difficult.
Not just that, Jova. This game absolutely delights in wasting your time by making you play the campaign 8 times to properly 100% it.
Yeah, like, now that's something that's different between versions, but yeah, no, the fact that the original had you do that is like, ooh, that, and again, maybe in the time when it was released, this is what people found enjoyable. I mean, okay, remind me. How long did it take for Battletoads to start getting called out on its BS difficulty? Because if I recall correctly, back in the day... Yeah, because if I recall...
Because the major... When YouTube video game reviews became a major thing in 2006, 2007, that's when people started taking a look at Battletoads more in terms of... Because before the internet, I think maybe there were some forums that talked about it, but the major demonstration of Battletoads.
The best bet would be searching out what people said on Nintendo Power, particularly fan letters about it. But that would be literally a scavenging hunt, and it's mostly reserved to American players.
So my take is that Lost Levels is one of those games where, for gaming at the time, it was perfectly fine to do this stuff. People were like, "Oh wow, I get more playing time out of this." I mean, which was probably a terror for those trying to complete the game before the rental period ended, but I digress. And I guess they did give us the better Super Mario Brothers 2 over in America, especially since that version would later go on to have actually a good amount of influence on the series, surprisingly.
I have my own problems with how Super Mario Brothers, how Doki Doki Panic / Super Mario Brothers 2 USA is designed as well, but it's definitely a much better game, if anything, because it's actually fun to play for one.
No. The thing about Lost Levels 2 isn't just that it's difficult, it's that it eases you in, thinking that, okay, maybe it's a little bit more difficult, but you're just in for more of a good time. And then I think as early as like the second level it goes, "Ha! No! Welcome to hell." I think the tone really gets set as soon as you get to the level with the Walking Hammer Bros. Like, god damn the Walking Hammer Bros. Again, let me put it like this. This game is one of the Zenith challenges here. Go in here to test your mettle as a platformer. Just know that you really don't have to prove yourself with this game. You really don't, because by modern standards, this game is kind of bad.
It's not even just the level design. It has no identity of its own. Like, as a sequel, like as a sequel to the original, it uses the exact same soundtrack, mostly the exact same graphics. It doesn't really have an identity of its own. Like it's exactly what it is. It's an expansion more than an actual sequel, even though it's being sold to you as a sequel.
I guess if you consider difficulty a personality of its own, because again, holy hell.
I mean, that's the one thing that you have to appreciate from Doki Doki Panic's turning into Super Mario Bros. 2. The fact that that game, at the very least, did something of its own rather than just reuse the exact same structure, plot, and graphics, and even the exact same soundtrack. But whereas this game doesn't really have an identity of its own. Not really.
Alright, that's my final thoughts.
Yeah.
I understand the frustration because it's legitimately founded, on solid ground on what this game does to the player. And I do believe that by the time it came out, by the original time it came out, it was definitely not worthy a full price, not even like a retail, for what it was worth back then. But these days, due to how easily accessible it can be, it's at the very least worth giving a try just to see what the fuss is about. Again, we have to remember that despite all of these problems that it caused, and some of them, bullshit enough that they were not even kept in future releases or kept, for what I want to say, like we beat the game X times in a row. It still paved the way to the entire subculture of the Kaizo Mario genre, that eventually led also to the creation of Mario Maker, So this game still did manage to accomplish something, and it still, managed to be remembered because of how brutal it manages to be. I agree that it should have been treated just for what it is, more of an expansion rather than an actual quote-unquote numbered sequel. But then again, after 3, the Mario games stopped kinda, going for a numbered sequel, aside from some exceptions like Galaxy, So that's more of a, thing that if you really want to bother about it more than anything. As for what this game is, again, worth giving a try. Maybe not spending too much time about it, especially if you're really that much frustrated. But if you really pulled up for that kind of masochistic challenges, I think this is a better option to pick than, say, Battletoads, for example, since we mentioned it before. So...
Oh no, I'll still take this over Battletoads, because Battletoads that game is flat. Like I said before, like the stage 12 of Battletoads to me is nigh impossible.
I just that argue, after the first 2 stages, each stage brings something that makes it near impossible to be completed properly, even with enough time and patience. But as for this game, again, it's true about everything about the frustration. So by the average standard, there are better options to pick even for difficult games. But just to see for the test of time, I do believe there is some merit into just giving it a look rather than wishing it never happened. But that's pretty much it. Pedro.
Yeah, like Teo said, this game is to be better seen as, okay, in my opinion, this game is better off. It shares one common thing that I do have with Zelda 1. This game works better as a piece of gaming history to be looked at like on a museum, rather than an actual game that you would want to play to have some fun.
So basically, your video game Indiana Jones. It belongs in a museum.
Yeah, basically. That's. I'm definitely gonna go full indie on this one. Definitely, it belongs in a museum. Definitely, it's not like with Zelda 1, but again, which is why that game needs a remake. Nintendo, just saying. But anyway, it's. Like the level design is custom made to frustrate you most of the time. Like I said, the fucking wind, and you guys even noticed how I was trying to do a wind jump, and the wind stops immediately right after I jump, which screwed me over, and which again, if that's not proof that the game hates me, again, even Teo said that the feeling is mutual, feels like it's mutual. Yeah,
I feel like
feeling is definitely mutual.
I feel like wind in video games is something that should be treated delicately, which is not what Lost Levels did, as was apparent.
Yeah. But it's not even just the difficulty that I have a problem with. Obviously, the difficulty is the main problem I have with this game. But at the same time, think about it. When people think about Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, what is the first thing that comes to their mind? The fact that it's difficult as fuck. But what beside that, though? Because when you take a look at most of the mainline Mario games, Super Mario Bros. Is, of course, the original masterpiece that propelled the franchise into what it is today. Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, of course, brought upon a lot of unique little enemies and interesting ideas that are still used today. Like, introduced the idea of Peach having a floating ability that we saw in 3D World Return. However, again, remember, it started off as an OG character from Doki Doki Panic, but regardless of where it came from, that's still a game that's important to Mario history. Super Mario Bros. 3 is, of course, the best NES Mario game that ticks all the excellent aspects that we will see later in Super Mario World even better. Mario World is, of course, the ultimate refinement of to the Mario formula. Then, of course, we have the 3D Mario games that also do their own unique little things here and there, depending on which game you pick.
Mm-hmm.
Even Galaxy 2, even though despite it's technically an expansion to the first one, even that game still does a lot of unique, cool stuff like Yoshi to make itself, at the very least, give itself its own unique flavor compared to Galaxy 1.
If I may...
this game... Yeah, go on.
One unique thing Lost Levels does have are those are the extra worlds, and I do mean the ones where they go all out with how trippy and just absolutely chaotic they are. Having water enemies suddenly fly in the air as if they're swimming and whatnot. And I will give credit where credit is due. It really does simulate what it feels like to be high, or at least from what I have heard anyway.
That is true. I was kind of forgetting that, but yeah, it's minor stuff, but I guess I'll still give it credit there. Yes, it introduced Luigi's trademark characteristics of slippery feet and a higher jump, which is still in development today. It introduced the idea of the special/secret/extra world concept that is very common in Mario games nowadays. Again, when Galaxy 2 brought that back, it was a direct reference to this game. Yeah, and also introduced the poison mushroom.
Yeah,
which is still something that is, happens. There's also it also appears in Smash and shit like that. Again, it's something that being said, though, aside from those minor little introductions to certain things, this game is usually only remembered for the difficulty.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good reason for that, because the game itself, when you take a look at the game beyond its difficulty, it doesn't really have much going for it. The structure is the exact same. The plot is copy-pasted, but with even worse phrasing. Peace is paved, tale of long friendship, whatever the fuck this means. The levels are mostly copy-pasted in terms of its assets. I mean, yeah, there's some minor refinements here and there, but it's not much. The game still basically looks the same. And the music is literally a copy-paste job. Literally a copy-paste.
Single new track at all.
No, it's literally a copy-paste job.
Okay, so part of me does wonder, was this just their field mentality on this, or was this because they really just wanted it to feel purely like a Mario 1? Now, I'm not saying artistic license excuses it. Again, I'm just trying to put myself in the mindset of why they did certain things this way, because compare this to the sequel to Legend of Zelda, which, needless to say, definitely did change things for Zelda 2.
That's the thing, Joe. But the reason Zelda 2 is as different as it is because Nintendo was actually concerned with Zelda getting stale too quickly. But then when the reaction came that people actually liked the formula of the original, that's when they went back to that in Link to the Past. So
yeah.
So basically, I guess we were needlessly concerned. So let's actually go back to the drawing board.
I'm wondering if something similar might have happened with Mario, except in the opposite. Whereas with Zelda, they thought people would get too bored of it. I wonder if with Mario, they thought that people would kind of be alienated by something that was too different from the original, and that's why they made it the way they did, which is kind of ironic because for the American version, holy cow, what a departure. Admittedly a welcome departure, but ironically enough, that one is probably the more fondly looked upon version of Super Mario Brothers 2.
I mean, I do have my own gripes with the way Super Mario Bros. 2 does certain things. In particular, specifically the way sometimes you're forced to explore and find certain keys to open certain doors. And I know what you're going to say. Well, but secrets is a thing that you see even in Mario Bros. 3 right after that. True, but usually the secrets in Mario 3 are optional. You can still go on a basic stage by stage. You don't have to find all the secret warp zones to complete the game. But in Mario Bros. 2, you're literally forced in certain levels to explore and find a key that's hidden in some kind of obtuse place. And to me, the strength of the mainline Mario games is it's not about what you're doing; it's about whether or not you have the skill to do that. It's not about figuring out what to do; it's about, okay, am I good enough to do this? That's what it is. And I think the Mario Bros. Again, the fact that Mario Bros. 2 didn't start out as a Mario game does kind of show. But whatever, we're not here to talk about that. The point is, to answer Joba's question. Maybe, possibly, we have no actual confirmation from anybody, so it's all speculation at that point. As the sequel to again, I have to reemphasize this is not called Super Mario Bros. For super players, even though it should. It was sold to you as Super Mario Bros. 2 as the big fancy sequel, it's clearly not really. It's very minimal work that was done for sequel purposes because this is clearly meant to be a harder version of the first game. That's what it is.
Do we have a gauge
which would be fine if they at the very least were more honest about it regarding to it, because if you actually look it up, this was sold in Japan as the proper sequel.
Yeah, I was about to ask, do we have a gauge?
Sorry, go on.
Do we have a gauge of the reception that this game got upon its release in both Japan and overseas, respectively?
Well, in Japan, it was, as far as I'm aware, it didn't really get negative reception. Because remember, like you yourself said, this was a different time in gaming where people were much more tolerant to cheap level design.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I'm aware, I mean, I don't really have any documents proving what I'm saying right now, but but I'm pretty confident the original Japanese release was well received.
I can get that.
I mean, it wasn't the phenomenon that the original game was, but it was, as far as I'm aware. I mean, the Famicom Disk System didn't really go much further beyond that, so I'm guessing it didn't really set Japan on fire. As for the Western reception, remember, the Western got introduced to this game via the All-Stars compilation. So even people who hated Lost Levels they just had to ignore it because they have 3 other great games right next to it to play in that collection. So the West got it best by getting the better version, packed in with other games, so that so Lost Levels at the time was mostly regarded as just a bonus because people didn't really know where the hell this Lost Levels game came from at the time, you know.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
But remember, in Japan, this was sold to you as the sequel. And while we did get a better sequel in the West, it doesn't change the fact that it doesn't really have much of an identity of its own. The game is, in my opinion, not really that much fun to play. I feel like the original Super Mario Bros. Had a really good balance. It wasn't too easy, but it was also too hard. It managed to reach a really good balance where the game will always be challenging enough to keep you engaged, while at the same time being forgiving enough so that you could, have a relaxing good time while playing it.
So in that case,
go on.
So in that case, would you call the sequel to Dark Souls 2 of platformers?
Kind of. Okay. Well, Dark Souls was already challenging to begin with.
They argue to actually add the new stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's why I argue, but Dark Souls 2 of platformers, because from what I understand, the main complaint with Dark Souls 2 has been that it threw out the challenging but still fair difficulty that defined Dark Souls 1.
Me and Dibs and Shira are currently playing that one, so look at those parts if you want a better judgment for what
Yeah.
we've been passing so far.
Let me put it in simple terms. The problem with Dark Souls 2 is one, the challenge a lot of times come from how bad the design stuff is, and there's problem with hitboxes in that game as well. The hitboxes in that game are not very good. Okay, you can check Mauer's video on it because he made a video about it as well, and he does a good job explaining it and showing various footage examples. But so yeah, this is a game that I don't go often back to, and yeah, I think I've made my reasons clear. It's just one of those games that is just like, it's more of a curiosity than anything. When it comes to actually picking it up and playing it to have fun like you would the other Mario games, not really to me. Like, but that's okay, everybody, because it's all uphill from here. When it comes to the mainline Mario platformers, it all goes. This is as low as it gets, as far in my opinion. It's all uphill from here.
All right.
So look forward to the next time where we start Super Mario Brothers 2, and by that I mean the American Super Mario Brothers 2.
Mm-hmm.
So tune in for that.
See you then.